I want to say it was very early hours. It was either very late in the evening or very early in the morning when he came back in. And it awakened both myself and my mother. He had something he wanted to show us. This apparently was some debris or something he brought in from the field at that time. And I understand he was on his way to the air base to deliver this, but he felt that this was unusual enough that he wanted us to see it first before he delivered it to its proper destination. Well, he was, as I recall, very excited, and again he said, "I want to show you something," and so I got my house coat on, as did my mother, and he had gone out to the car and brought back in some metallic debris. I believe it was in a box. I don't recall whether I walked outside with him or not, but he made it seem like the 1942 Buick we had was loaded with the stuff in the back seat and in the trunk area. At any rate, he brought the material in and spread it on the kitchen floor, and in an effort to try to piece it together like a jigsaw puzzle to get some idea of the form of this. But unfortunately, there was too much of it, too finely divided to do that.
How old were you at the time?
11.
And when he spread all this material out on the floor, what was your impression about what this material was like? How would you describe it?
Well, initially, just looking at it, well, what's this all about? You know, sleepy. But then when you get down and looking at it, it was the unusual character of the debris. And I want to say that he said something like, "This is from a flying saucer," but I'm not sure that he said that. But the meaning was clear that this is something very special. And he wanted us to look at it.
And what's your recollection about what the material looks like, felt like?
Well, I could divide it into three major categories. Thinking back on it a few times, there was a lot of rather thick foil-like material, kind of not a shiny aluminum, but burnished or a slate gray type of aluminum metal. There was black plastic type debris like bakelite, which was shattered. It was very brittle material. And then there were fragments of what appeared to be I-beams, relatively small, but the typical I-beam type configuration.
Let's talk a little bit about each category for in a little bit of detail, if you will. Let's talk about first the foil-like substance. What was the size of this material?
Well, I don't recall seeing any piece that was greater than 4 to 6 inches in circumference or in diameter. I don't recall whether I tried to test it for being able to tear it or bend it or anything like that. It was very light, and again, a dull metallic gray color. And there was a lot of that.
How thick would you describe this material?
Well, it was thicker than the usual kitchen foil. I guess there's a newer foil out now for heavy-duty use that is used in storing food, and that's approximately what it was like.
In terms of thickness?
In terms of thickness.
Any other similarities to everyday household items that people...
Well, it was metallic, that's about all I can say. Not shiny.
And the pieces of the foil-like substance, what shape were they?
Well, it was shredded, at least, torn.
So irregular in shape?
Irregular, right.
And there was a lot of this material?
Well, enough to cover the floor with.
Was this...
and more, because there's a lot more left in the car.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. He didn't bring in all of them?
No. That was only one portion in the car.
Okay. The weight of this material you described as light, would you say that it was unusually light, lighter than you would expect, or heavier, or anything at all unusual about its weight?
No feathers. Very, very light.
Very light.
In other words, you could take a piece and it wouldn't just fall to the floor, but it kind of drift down fairly slow like a feather.
No, that's very interesting.
And,
did you actually see that?
No, I did not, but this is what, I would have thought it would be like, if I would have done that. I felt drift.
Light as a feather. Interesting. What you described as almost plastic or bakelite like material. Tell me a little more about that.
Well, it was black, brown in color. Again, irregular pieces. About a 1/16 of an inch, maybe a little bit greater in thickness. And brittle. At least I suspect it was brittle because it shattered. Like lines.
I want to make sure I understand. You didn't actually see it shatter,
No.
but it appeared to have been shattered.
I didn't try to bend or test any of these things, so I just picked them up gently and handled them.
Anything else unusual about the weight of this material? Plastic.
It was very light also. It's kind of hard to, I don't recall it, comparing it with other.
Anything else worthy of comment about this material? Would you recall?
Basically just the description of color, shatter type, bakelite material. Yeah.
Now how about what you described as I-beams? What were those like?
Well, they were, again, looked like the same type of material that the foil-like materials made of. Metallic, dull gray aluminum, except very light again. I did not try to bend it or stress it in any way, although the piece I remember looking at was about 12 to 18 inches in length. Both ends, I think, were shattered or broken off. It wasn't a clean cut. And the material thickness appeared to be about a 1/16 of an inch thickness.
And what color were they?
Again, it's a dull gray, like a flat aluminum finish. I guess would be a good way to describe that.
Metallic?
Metallic, definitely metallic.
Anything else unusual about this particular piece of material?
Well, the most unusual part of this whole thing was what was on the I-beam, on the inner surface of the I-beam. Because as you look at it head on, there appeared to be a type of writing on the mainframe itself. This writing was definitely a purplish violet hue. It did have an embossed appearance because you could, if I recall, you could rub your finger on it and you could tell it had texture. I don't recall seeing any lines or letters of any kind, but it was more like geometric shapes. Or, well, it's hard to describe it. It was curved geometric shapes. There might have been some triangles and circles, but it was solid.
Is it possible you might have mistaken it for Russian, Japanese, any other language?
No way.
Anything like hieroglyphics?
Well, in my first impression, this is Egyptian hieroglyphics, but I knew enough at that time to know that it wasn't, because hieroglyphics usually have some animal symbols in it also, but there was none.
And the lettering, or we can call it lettering, of these symbols.
Individual symbols. They were not connected.
They were in color?
Yeah, yes.
But they were on a surface that was what?
Well, the surface was the same color as the rest of the I-beam, dull metallic gray.
So it's just the symbols that were in a kind of purple pink.
That's right. That was the color that caught your eye. Here in all this mass of metallic gray pieces, here's this flash of color.
What do you recall your father saying that night about how he came into possession of this material?
I don't recall a whole lot of the mechanics or the logistics involved, but I do know he'd been gone for quite a while. I'm not sure exactly how long he'd been gone even, but he, if I remember saying something about this came from a crash site or from some fellow's ranch or northwest of Roswell.
Why was he excited about this?
Because he felt this was something very unusual. Felt it was probably something we'd never seen before, would ever see again. And again, I want to say that he said the words flying saucer, but I cannot be sure about that. I'm almost positive he did, but I can't recall verbatim what he said.
And how long was he at your home that night with the material on the floor?
The total time there was about 15 or 20 minutes.
And what happened after that?
Loaded it back in the car and took off.
Do you know where he went?
Well, he was going back to the base. So that's my understanding.
Your father didn't think it was a weather balloon or a radar target?
Never did.
Do you think it was?
Well, even at that young age, I had kind of an interest in electronics and weather and things like that. And I'd seen weather balloons. And I'd seen pictures of radar targets. It was not one of them.
Was it like anything you'd ever seen before?
Not really. One thing that sets it apart, of course, was those I-beams with the symbols.
Did your father ever speculate about what it was, where it came from?
We would talk about it periodically over the next several years, perhaps, and we'd always felt that it was something very unusual. I think initially they might have thought it was even a Russian weapon or something. That was for the reason for the cover-up or the burying the story. But later, it was determined it was not a Russian balloon. So that left one other possibility, and it was something from out of our atmosphere.
Was your father in the habit of discussing his work? Well, he was in intelligence.
No, it was not.
Not in the habit of discussing his work. So I guess it wouldn't be real unusual for him to be rather quiet about it.
He was not given to, verbal diarrhea about things like that.
But he obviously did eventually talk.
Yeah, as time went on, the seed had been planted in the back of our minds that there's something very unusual about this. And from time to time, you'd read about some UFO sighting in the paper, and it would trigger maybe a little conversation about what this was.
When you'd see these stories in the newspapers, kind of what was your reaction to it? Did you kind of, I know something more about it, or?
Well, my initial reaction is maybe most of these are hoaxes and maybe a misidentification of things, but I do know of one that was not a hoax or misidentification.
Was it the feeling of you, your father, your mother, that it was extraterrestrial in origin?
Yes. We felt it was all a very unique experience. That, we just happened to be at the right place at the right time to see things.
But was your feeling that it was extraterrestrial?
Yes. Actually, my own personal thoughts was, after we started sending satellites around, the Russians in 1957 with the Sputnik, I felt that maybe this was a probe that happened to land on our planet from someplace else.
From another planet.
From another origin.
Is there any possibility that your dad might have slipped a piece out of the box to keep for a souvenir?
No possibility.
He'd never think of doing something like that?
Not at all.
His background was intelligence. Was that his job all through his military career? Was he always in intelligence?
Well, that and photo analysis, interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Now, did there have been stories that he flew as a gunner?
Well, he did man the guns. I know that. I think what happened, he was a navigator, or he went aloft many times to view the bombing runs personally. Despite the fact they had photographs, but he could get more information by being there on the site. Mm-hmm. And I do know one time that they were shot pretty badly, and he had to take over for the guns. He must have known how to man 50 calibers for some reason. I know he did that. He described sitting on an empty box of ammo and having some slugs go between his legs through the box from the Japanese firing at him.
and was quite excited about that, I imagine.
And another time they were shot down. They had four engines shot out. The plane and the B-29 doesn't fly very well on two, and then the third one gave up. They're going down like a rock.
Did he have to bail out, or did they?
He bailed out.
So his military career, he was basically in intelligence mostly for his military career.
And he would get stick time as a pilot too, as much as he could. A non-rated aviator too.
There was the story that's been published that he wrote the speech for Truman when the atomic bomb was exploded by the Soviets. Any truth to that, or he provided the intelligence information for the president?
I have a vague recollection of something of that nature, but I don't know that he wrote the speech. But I do know that he was in on preparing something, gathering information.
It's part of this intelligence function.
Right, yeah, but that was not really a subject of conversation.
Did you ever notice your dad, or did your dad ever break security other than this one time when he brought the material home? Although he really wasn't breaking security since it wasn't classified yet. Did your dad ever break security at all that you recall?
One other time.
And that would be when?
I don't know whether I guess it's. I hate to bring that up, though. I don't know whether.
Okay. But so, as far as you know, your dad really never broke security.
Right.
He never really talked to the neighbors. He never talked to friends about what he was learning with his job.
No, it was all pretty.